What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here to break down the new Domination Station MLB Optimizer version 10.0, our latest build. Today is June 4th, 2020, and we've just released a new build on our MLB Optimizer, so I figured today was a good time to do a complete and thorough overview of how to use the Domination Station Optimizer to create stacked, correlated lineups for MLB. Now, I say MLB, but we're working on KBO, Korean baseball, right now because we're waiting for MLB to come back. But it's a good time to check it all out. So let's jump right in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've changed, what we've added. But more importantly, I'm going to show you what we've done. But I want to do a general overview first. So as you can see here, we are on the Domination Station Optimizer. I have DraftKings selected, MLB selected, and of course we are seeing KBO, not MLB. For those of you who don't know, with KBO, the lineups come out extremely late, and there's no data feed for Korean Baseball League, unfortunately, so we have to do this manually. So you will generally see for each slate initially a projected lineups and then a confirmed lineups slate. If you are not playing on the confirmed lineup slate, your lineups are not confirmed. Very important. Now, what you see here are the teams that are playing today. And this is a very important thing here. You have currently in the team boxes your implied run totals for each team. Now, these are different than the game total, well, in the sense that we're not using the classic 1.5 point spread, but rather we're using actual implied run totals for each team, so you can get a sense of which teams' lineups are projected to score really well on the slate, and you do with that what you will. Obviously, looking at this one, looks like Do is the highest projection in terms of a team total, but you have a bunch of teams here projected for 6 runs as well. Very good. As always, you have your filters, your player filters up here. You could just mess with the player pool however you like. Salary range, fantasy points range, these are things not to touch. Salary cap, I suggest you don't mess with. And I am, for the purpose of this demo, going to do 50 lineup runs. That is for speed. There he is, Chris. CG, what's up, my man? Good to have you in here. Very important stuff we're about to go over. All right. Now, looking over at these bars, every option on the Domination Station has an infographic. You can always find out what it is. I know a lot of people, we don't like to look, we don't like to read, but it is there for you to understand. Now, I always use tournament mode, even though I would say for MLB, it's not necessary. Tournament mode works with max exposure limits to spread those players across the entirety of your created lineups. So unless you are setting max exposure limits on players like pitchers, for example, we'll go over that. Tournament mode really doesn't do anything. Another very important thing with our MLB system, when you log on, it will be set to browser mode. Browser is essentially the optimization occurring within your browser. It's slower, but it's fine for making 2 or 3 lineups, seeing kind of what the optimal is. When you're going to run multiple lineups, I want you to switch it over to server mode. That is a faster way of creating lineups. You'll notice a palpable difference. Now, right here, you have an option to allow opposing pitchers or allow hitters against the pitcher they're facing. That's an option you might want to use in a 2 or 3 game type of slate. Beyond that, I'm not a big use a pitcher and hitters against him kind of guy. It's kind of the perfect negative correlation. Not my thing. Here you can filter out hitters if you don't want ninth place hitters or whatever. I wouldn't suggest necessarily getting too excited over there. Only confirmed. I wouldn't mess with this. Prioritize completing lineups above match exposure settings. Is self-explanatory. As you start to set max exposures extremely harshly, eventually you can't make lineups. So this will just prioritize completing the lineups you asked for. Now, randomization. This just creates a random factor to the projection for every player. Essentially, if you have randomization set at 10, then a player is set to score or projected to score 10 points, what will happen is a random sort of occurrence, a random chance will be applied to that player's projection for each lineup created, and it will fall somewhere between 9 and 11, so a plus or minus 10% range. Now, I'm going to show you the effect of this very shortly. Now, MLB is all about stacking. We know this. There are a few different types of stacks that work. We know that as well. So, we're talking DraftKings. DraftKings allows you to use as many as 5 hitters from the same team. And the standard stacking approach for DraftKings might be a 5-3 or a 5-2 type approach to stacks, meaning 5 players from one team and then a secondary stack in there with 2 or 3. I've seen 4-4 work. You're the user. You get to decide what you want to do. Everybody's got their own idea. I'm a big fan of looking at what wins normally, and the more you stack, the better your chances of winning tournaments are. Why? Because if you look at tournaments of the past and you look at who won them, they are always or almost always massively stacked lineups. So here we have our stack rules, and this is called new stacking approach. This is all that anybody should ever use when using the Domination Station. These are, when you see legacy randomized hitter stacks and legacy, anything that says legacy, that's an old method. We leave it up there because as we're testing out a new method, we might find some bugs, don't want to remove it, but also there are some people who are stubborn and don't want to learn anything new, and they've been using the old system, and I like the old system. All right, so we leave it there for you for a minute, but that'll probably be gone pretty soon. So there's nothing you can't do with the new stacking approach, and this is what the preferred method is to use. Now, let me go over a little bit of what you see here. So the first thing you do is select a number of players per stack for each stack. Stack 1 and stack 2, these are 2-team stacks, and you could select 5-3, you could do 4-3, we could do 4-4. There are a few different options. Obviously, there are 8 player positions. We can't do a 5-5, but if it's a 5, we'd have to do a 5-3. We could do a 4-4. We could do a 5-2. We could do a 4-3. If you like having a lot of one-offs. So Chris is asking for a 5-2. Man, if that's what you're into, bro, if that's what you're into, I'm not going to criticize it. That's not what I'm not here to criticize. I'm here to help. All right. So Chris said 5-2. Fine by me. Now, what are we looking at here? Here, you enable teams in your stack. So let's say you go in and you say, I've got 4 teams that I want to heavily stack. I've read the notes for today, and we're all about these 4 teams. Okay, well, you can uncheck whoever you want. You could check whoever you want. You can use this to uncheck them all or recheck them. So let's say I want 1, 2, 3, 4 teams. That's all I want to stack, or 5 teams in the 5. Okay, there you go. Now we've disabled these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams from the 5-player stack. Same thing here. Enable who you want. Disable teams that you don't want to play. Now, if I'm looking up top here, Han has an implied run total of 2. Lot has a 3.39, and SK has a 3.17. So let's just get rid of those 3. Han, Lot, and SK, right? We'll play the rest. So let's get rid of those 3. Han, what the hell were they? Han, Lot, and SK. Boom. So we got rid of those 3 on each side. Han, Lot. Now, isn't it funny? I bet the slate probably played out already. And maybe it was one of those 3 teams that actually was the nuts lineup. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Okay, so that's step 1. Now, step 2, we can control this even further. Now, let's say I really love, I don't know, let's say I really love Do, right? They're projected to score a lot of runs. So I can set a forced minimum of however percentage I want for Do. I can go 50%. What that's going to do is create the first 50% of my lineups will have Team Do stacked in the 5-man stack. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to leave that. And let's give it a run. Okay, and then we're going to go through some new options, including the random team select and the randomization bar, and I'm going to show you how they differ. But let's just give it a run straight up. 50 lineups, Korean baseball, 5-2, the CG special. Now, every time I do one of these runs, it takes about, I don't know, 8 to 10 seconds. So I like to fill it up with a little yaps. But here we go. We've just run the tool. We've created these beautiful stacked lineups. Now, what do you see here? You've got 4 players from Team Do. You've got 2 players from Team Sam, a couple of one-offs. I'm sorry, 5 players from Do, of course, 2 players from Sam, and a one-off. That's a 5-2-1 stack with these 2 pitchers. Every team that we created should be stacked like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players, 2 from NCD in this case, and Sam. Now, how do we know really what the hell just happened when we make these lineups? Well, you can check it. So when you look in the exposures bar, number one, you could see that some of these players from Team Do showed up at 100% exposure. The first baseman, the outfielder, we didn't get a lot of variance here, right? These are fully projection-driven stacks. Not going to get a lot of variance. Now, if you look at the team selection, looks like we have 100% exposure to Do with a bunch of these other teams mixed in. The stacks themselves, we got Do actually wouldn't even need to set 50%. They must be the highest projected. It makes sense. So even if I set this at 0, we would essentially get 100% Do in the 5-man stack, and then all of these other teams mixed into the 2-man stack. And for combinations, you'll see that Do was here are the teams that were combined. Now, note something very interesting here in the combinations bar. You can control the combinations of any teams using max limits. So let's say Do and Sam 34%. I say, yeah, it seems like a lot. I can set a max of 15% for that stack. We can control it. Now, my philosophy, our philosophy, what wins in MLB is not necessarily stacking the best projected team every single week. It's a high variance sport. So there are a couple of ways to deal with the variance. Now, one approach is to jack up randomization massively. So you might go randomization all the way up to 50%, run it again, and let's see what happens. And what I would expect here is a greater diversification of the team selections and the combinations. So let's see what happens as we run this. Now, it's possible that Do is so well projected that even with a 50% randomization bar on, we're still going to get a ton of them. I don't know. Let's take a look. Now, all of these features have been on the Domination Station up until recently. So let's take a look at the teams. And okay, so we got a little bit less Do here, 70% versus 100. In our stacks, we're getting a little bit of a better diversification with just 50% of Do in the 5-man stack. And then you get a little of them in the 3-man. And in the combinations, look how much more exposure we're getting across all these different combinations. For MLB, a much better approach. You're still kind of getting projection-driven lineups, but now not as much, not as extreme. Notice here with the 50% randomization on, we no longer have any players that are 100% exposure, down to significantly lower numbers here. Now, here's the newest feature that we actually just added with this update, random select teams. Now, I want to explain what this does. Among the teams that are enabled in stack 1 and stack 2, in the previous method, even with randomization on, it was using max projected to select which team to use initially. So it would look at each team and say, which combination of 5 players gets us the best projection for the value? And then it would choose that team. It would look across all the teams and say, all right, 5 players from Do, get us 100 points for 10K salary, whatever, versus 5 players from KTW is 95 points for a little less salary. It's fully projection driven. What random select teams does is it removes that, and it actually creates a situation where it will literally randomly select the team that you have allowed and enabled on each side of the stack. And then within the stack, it will use projection-driven players to get the highest projected lineup. But the initial selection will be random. And I'm going to show you, we're going to take off the randomization. Remember, when we ran it with 0 just before, we got 100% Do. in the 5-man stack because that team is clearly the highest projection team with the highest implied run total. Therefore, the players from that team are the best projected. Now let's take a look at what happens when we run it with complete randomization checked off. Now, while I'm doing this, I'm going to explain why I did this. This is something we came up with. Really, it's just for any sport where you stack lineups. You don't win in MLB by taking the chalk. You really win in MLB by finding the right combination of two teams that are stacked together whose lineups go off on any particular slate. So we need the two teams stacked together that score 8, 10 plus runs. We're not looking for a 7.4 run outing. I'm looking for the team that scores 12 runs because when a team scores 12 runs, their entire offense is crushing. So these are mean projections, but what I want are 2 standard deviation unit events, and I want both of them stacked. That's how you win a tournament. So if Dew scores 7.4 runs, probably not winning the tournament with that. Everybody's playing Dew. They're the clearly highest. They're the chalk team just because they have the highest implied run total. You ain't winning with that shit. But if, team number 4, Kia, who is projected less than LG, it's like the 4th best team, less than KIW. If they go off and you have a 5-person stack of that team, you're in good shape. So let's see what happened. Let's see what happened with the teams. Check this out. An almost perfect distribution of exposures across all of the teams that we have allowed. So the only teams that aren't showing up right now are these 1, 2, 3 teams that we've disallowed. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank goodness I was just right. I didn't know for sure. Okay. Under stacks now. Look at the neat set of exposures. We're not overboard on anything. Dew still coming out the most because they are the highest projected team by far. But you're getting a much more even distribution of the teams that you've allowed. And finally, under the combinations tab, check this out. I mean, the diversification here is as good as anything you could ever ask for. So this is randomization method. Now you might say that's too much diversification for me, or I like my everything to be done fully projection. Okay. That's why the option is you don't have to use this. This is an option for people who like to play using this approach. So one of the cool things about the Domination Station Optimizer and about being a part of DFS Army is we set up our tools so that you will be successful as a player. Okay, I actually disallow things that I think are donkey things to do. Like, for example, our optimizer will not let you play batters against their pitcher unless you really, really want to force it to. Or in MMA, our optimizer will not let you play fighters against their opponents because that's fucking donkey move most of the time. So we don't want that. Same thing here. I want you to get diversified MLB lineups. That's how you win. You can set it up. So even with, now you might say, well, fully random, I don't like that. It's too fucking random for me, right? So if it's too random, that's fine. You still want a lot of Dew? You can set the min. It's still going to use it. It will respect your wishes. You want to set 50% min here? You want to set a min on another KTW, 25? Whatever you want to do, you can do it. Remember, you can't set min exposures on any one stack above 100% total because there's only 100% of exposure available, but you can also set max limits. So the idea here is you have full control over the types of lineups that you create. No excuses. If you don't want certain players, you can X them out. If you want players to show up that aren't, you hit the love button. You hit the adore. You raise the projection. Full control. In this case, I raised up my Dew in the 5 team to 50%. And as you'll see, it gave it 50%. And then it just spread it out amongst the rest of them. My combinations, again. Now, check this out. Dew KTW, I got 28%. I don't know. It's too much. Too much. Too much for me. What are we going to do? Now, remember, I had set a minimum on KTW on this side of 25%. So it's got to use it a lot. But maybe I say 28% is too much. Let's go to 20%. I can limit it, run it again, and now, assuming that there are enough possible combinations with setting mins on KTW and do, I'll be see not enough combinations. So let's say, why is that? Well, the issue here is we forced do into 50% of these lineups, and we're forcing KTW into 25%. There's not enough combinations if we limit it. So we either have to go 0 here or 0 there, or accept a ton of do KTW lineups. But each run, there's a reason why we want to set it up the way that we do. I believe that the most important thing with MLB is getting diversified stacks. I'd probably run it 5-3. I'm much more of a 5-3 aficionado. And stacking like crazy, but also making sure that my combination, because you're basically guessing who are the two teams that score the most points today going to be. Is it these two? Is it these two? I don't know. Again, when we remove the forced stack on do, this is random. So this time we got KIW the most. A couple more. It's just random chance. If I run it again, remember, these are random. It should be different. So every time we run it using random team select, it's going to be slightly different. It is a completely randomized system. I love it because if I'm leaving a team checked off as allowed to be used, that means I want to use them. And this is how this works. Now you might say, I don't like that. I want the projections to drive my team and player choices. That's fine. Just don't use that check mark. You don't have to use it. Where is it? Yeah, we don't have to use it. We can just let it be powered by projections. And again, if you want to not use random select, but you do want diversification, you want to raise up the randomization bar. So once you're done running your lineups from the MLB optimizer from the Domination Station, hit download, save, and you can upload those directly to your DraftKings account, directly to your Fanduel account, or you can edit them if you have the lineups reserved. We have a very simple method for editing your lineups. One other note, one thing we have going on here is if you wanted to go back to a previous run, we saved the last 4 runs of the optimizer for you. So if you wanted to go back and say, hey, I like that last result a little bit better, you can go back and see that one. Another thing I had mentioned that if we run it again, and you kind of check, it'll be different this time. And note that, yes, the combinations and the exposures when you have random select on will change each time you run the tool. It will be different each time you run it. And that's just because there's a random factor programmed in if you use the randomization function. So that's it for this breakdown, guys. Good luck using the optimizer. Make sure you use new stacking approach. Soon enough, we're getting rid of these other 2, I believe. If you have any questions, of course, you can always hit me up or any of our MLB staff up. CG is now a full-on expert. So hit him up in Slack, in the Domination Station channel or in the MLB channel. Myself, the Geek, it's just me, Keg, any one of us who is regularly mass multi-entering with MLB can help you answer questions or discuss strategy. That's how we roll in DFS Army. If you're watching this randomly and you're not a DFS Army subscriber, I don't know what you're waiting for. Get in there. We have awesome tools like this for every single sport. This is how we roll. We are very serious about winning at DFS. This ain't like the other sites. We're about our members winning at DFS, and our tools are designed to win. If you don't believe me, wait a minute. Let me take off the screen and let me show you. I'm going to show you my background. Hold on. Let's see if I can take, I want to show you my background. Oh man, I don't know how to do it. Can't make it happen. I wanted to show you my Bobby. All right, wait, check this out. Bobby, wow, that's my guy. All right, that's it for this one, guys. Good luck this week. Good luck tonight. Crushing some KBO. Hopefully, crushing some MLB. Whatever you're doing. We'll be back next time with another one of these tutorials. Take care.